Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buonasera to all of our Laziali and Calcio fans tuning in to another episode of the Bianco Celesti broadcast. I am your host, as always, Sean McIntosh, joined by the Canadian kid, my Canadian counterpart from up north, Stephen K. Moore. Stephen, how are you?
Not too bad. The last time we spoke, Lazio was kind of heading into that Coppa Italia match, and of course we lost that, but we've rebounded well, and we're on a good streak in the league right now. So Lazio's keeping me happy. What about yourself?
Yeah, I can't complain. I know both of us have been busy. We took a little bit of a hiatus. There hasn't been massive matches, in between. We obviously want to make sure we're jumping on and talking in advance of some of the big games coming up, which brings us to today. I don't know. I'm hoping we're not bringing bad luck on ourselves, because by not doing this show, we were in a really nice string of forms. So, but I am excited to be joined by our guest today, Nima from SempreInter.com and the Italian Football Podcast. Nima, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good, and it's a pleasure all mine. Good to be with you guys.
Yeah, it's a big one, and when I obviously thought about this game, you're the first person that came to mind. We've had a chance to obviously message back and forth and followed each other for a little while. I love what you do. I love your takes. Don't always agree with them, but I think you're a pretty level-headed Inter fan and just a calcio and a person in general, which is oftentimes hard to find on Twitter. There's a lot of craziness out there. So it's been a pleasure to obviously be associated with you, and thank you for coming on.
Oh, likewise, Sean. I got to say, I love that you see. This is the thing. This is why I love interacting with you, both of you guys. Is the fact that even if you don't agree, you can. There's always this kind of you can have a rational conversation with people. And social media, unfortunately, it's anti-social media. Is what it is. It's basically. It's a lot of people who I suspect don't have a lot of real life friends who go on there and don't know how to behave and completely lose it and act cool in front of each other. It's like being in junior high, only no one. It's just really weird. It's really weird, and so I don't take it seriously. I just laugh it off and whatever. But it's nice to meet, like you said, to meet people like, that you can actually have a connection with and have an intelligent conversation and exchange with, even if you don't agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think that's what's special, particularly about the calcio community. It's why I love the game of calcio or football or soccer. It is a unifier, if done correctly. It should bring people together. And so, we're excited to talk about Inter Lazio on Sunday. Massive match, big opportunity for both clubs. Both see themselves in a pretty positive position in the league table. Right now, Lazio sees themselves in fourth with 40 points. Inter at 47 points, sitting in second in the table. As an Inter expert, how do you see their season right now? Is Inter exceeding your expectations, meeting, or falling a little bit short?
I see. That's an excellent question because, but it's kind of impossible to answer it because this season has been so crazy. We went into it after a very good season last season. You have to say, finishing second, 81 points, final of the Europa League. It was a good season. You saw, you saw development and improvement on by every metric. So given the past decade, I'd say. But having said that, then going into this season, the players and signings that he made, and obviously COVID having a big impact on that. But again, what we said about nuance. I mean, several things can be true at the same time. Yes, Inter have a liquidity issue because of their ownership. With Suning have a liquidity issue, but it's also true that Antonio Conte has wanted Arturo Vidal, Alexander Kolarov, and Mattia Darmian from the first day he arrived at Inter. The deal with Parma for Darmian was done a year ago. So none of these signings are signings that have been forced upon him. These are signings he wants. And when you make these signings of elderly players, then you're not building for the future, you're building for the now. And so the expectation changes. Inter did not start the season off well at all. Conte was struggling and tinkering with the lineup, with the defensive balance. His Kolarov and his Vidal caused Inter several points in the Serie A. Vidal almost single-handedly cost Inter the Champions League. They finished last for the first time. That was a complete disaster in their group in the Champions League. First time ever Inter finished that badly in their group stage of the Champions League. But then something changed and he slowly got into it. I mean, Christian Eriksen, he turned that into a huge problem. Then he had to do a reversal when he saw that no one was going to buy him. And the reversal turned out to be pretty well. I think Eriksen as a mezzala or a regista is actually working out really well. And it gives Inter options that they don't have. I mean, I wouldn't play Eriksen against Juventus, but he didn't have any choice. I'd use Eriksen against teams like Sampdoria and Udinese who park the bus pretty much, and you need someone to break through that. I think there is where Eriksen is probably more useful. I think against Milan or a Lazio or a Juve, I'd probably play with Vidal, Barella and Brozovic, or even Gagliardini, because Gagliardini gives you defensive stability against teams that are very that are if not better than at least the same level as you tactically and technically. But having said all of that, I mean, before, and then you have the takeover discussion and all the rumors surrounding that's going on, and that's completely destabilizing. And the work that Antonio Conte and Beppe Marotta have done to keep this ship afloat and keep a tight ship and get them to burn for the cause, get the players to focus and concentrate, it should not be underestimated. I have nothing but, this is the kind of stuff that makes you immortal at a club. That when things are as difficult as they are right now, and things are difficult at Inter, if you manage to unite the group and get them to perform for you on the pitch, that's the stuff legends are made of. I don't think anyone in their right mind can demand anything other than what Inter are doing right now. You cannot ask Antonio Conte and demand him to win the Scudetto given the situation. It's been an absolutely horribly difficult season in terms of everything going on around the outside of the pitch. And he's unified. He's built a team that will die for him, and that's the most important thing. But I can't bring in myself to demanding a Scudetto or a Coppa Italia or anything from him this season. Only a top 4 finish is what you can ask, I think, given the incredibly difficult situation the club is in.
Very interesting there. And you kind of touched upon the experience aspect about how Conte wanted these experienced players. And I kind of look at it of experience is definitely good, especially on a team who hasn't been in Champions League too much. Like you look at a Lazio, there's only a few people who played in the Champions League before going into it. And that was kind of a factor I took into it when placing them in the group, obviously due to that fact. But does it become like kind of a factor of, is there too much experience with this Inter team right now by Conte demanding these kind of players? Like I see a lot of players from England coming over, like the Mkhitaryan's, the Pedro for Roma, then you have Sanchez, Eriksen for Inter. Are these players, although they're of quality, is too much experience kind of resisting their performance in a sense with Conte right now?
I don't think it's a experience issue. I think it's a quality and sell by date issue. You have a problem with Handanovic being past his sell by date. You have a problem with Kolarov at least 5 years past his sell by date. Arturo Vidal, undoubtedly so too. I mean, personally, I really liked Arturo Vidal as a player. I think he peaked at Juventus, if we're perfectly honest. He was good at Bayern Munich too, but since then he's not been good. The past 2 years at Barcelona before he came to Inter were not good. I watched those games with him. He was not good. He was playing in a good team at the time, but he wasn't offering much to that team. And then we saw Barcelona completely come off at the wheels. Obviously not his fault, but he was part of that squad. And so to me, it's a quality issue more than anything. He doesn't have that quality. He's been in good form, but he was brought in to give Inter that dynamism. He's not offering that. He has this thing where he just switches off like a light switch in the middle of games. He just stops running. He just stops moving. Not stops running. He just stops in his tracks, dead, as if the car is out of gas. It just stops. He does this time and time again, and that's a problem. But I do think that if Inter are going to defend deep and play against a team like a Juve in the league, which they did, I think he has a role to play for sure. But against teams like Udinese, Sampdoria, who will make it difficult for you, who will park the bus and shrink the space, or Parma, you don't need him. He fills no role. Same as Gagliardini, they don't fill any role. but you need more creative players, and I think that's where Eriksen and Brozovic come in to a certain extent. So
Nima,
yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say you mentioned obviously the steadying of the ship and how that can't be underestimated with what Conte has been able to do and obviously turn the season around. Lazio, very similar position, starting the league on pretty rocky grounds. Obviously, there was a focus and emphasis on Champions League after being out of that competition for so long. COVID hit Lazio pretty hard. So a lot of reasons why they weren't at their best in league play. But right now we're seeing really kind of a mirror image of both teams rounding into form at the right time of the season. Inter right now unbeaten in their past 5, a couple big wins, including a big win over Juve in the league. Lazio unbeaten, winning 6 in a row. Big wins over Roma, Atalanta. Which of these two clubs goes into this match in better form?
Oh, it's without a doubt Lazio. Lazio are the most informed team in Serie A. They have a consistency which Simone Inzaghi has given them. I don't think I agree with you or I agree with you that Lazio started off rocky, but I don't know what you think about why the reason was. My analysis of that is because Ilitare and Claudio Lotito are incompetent. In the summer, in a COVID economic climate, you go and spend 20 million euros on a backup striker like Murici when you have Caicedo and banking on maybe selling him on and sending Simone Inzaghi to the Champions League to play against Jadon Sancho and Haaland with Patrick and Johnny. It's just it's so stupid. It's mind-boggling stupid. That was not where they needed to invest that team. They needed to build from the back and on the left wing back position, and they didn't. And they sent this guy to the Champions League, which he quite rightly focused on and took precedent over the league, and he got them to the round of 16, which is unbelievably impressive. And so I think Inzaghi's ability for the past 5.5 years to turn lemons into lemonade. I mean, people praise. I mean, I've said this on the Italian Football Podcast several times and on Twitter. He's the most underrated coach in the Serie A. People sing the praises of De Zerbi for having Caputo and Berardi score a couple of goals, and pound for pound, as my colleague on the Italian Football Podcast says, Carlo Garganese, Atalanta are the best run club in the world, pound for pound. They are, from the structure, bottom up, top to bottom, they are the best run club. Gasperini has done a brilliant job. I'm not taking away from it. But you have to look at the conditions that Simone Inzaghi is working in. It's not even a competition as to what he has to deal with. He has an owner who more often than not is the biggest problem at that club and can't get out of his own way and creates problems that no one that don't exist. Lotito has a fantastic ability, because I'm not one of those who, I know a lot of Lazio fans detest Claudio Lotito. I'm much more nuanced than that. I think what he took over after the Craniottis, which was a complete mess, and what he's done and built is phenomenal. No doubt about that. But he can't take Lazio any further. This is his limit, because he lacks the competence to take him further. And this summer is just a brilliant example of that. They were banking on selling Caicedo, which they failed to sell, and they were going to use that money to strengthen the defense, and they didn't do that. So they spent 20 million euros on a backup striker that has been a complete disaster, which anyone who'd watched Murici would have told you was not gonna. I honestly don't understand.
I'm with you with a lot of those points, and I think the point on Lotito is pretty spot on, because I think he deserves a ton of credit that he often doesn't get for stabilizing that club, because we wouldn't be in a position without that. I think you got to take the good with the bad. Obviously, he gets in his own way when it comes to negotiations and selling off players. Sometimes that comes to our advantage, because you're never going to see Lazio give up a player like SMS at under the value that we see them. So you love to see that.
His eyes even.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think it's a good point that perhaps he's not the owner president to take us to that next level. I think though, I do think there are a lot of things at play for why we underperformed. Certainly the signings weren't the best. They weren't the right signings. Murici is rounding into form right now, which has been nice to see. Again, credit to Inzaghi because that's kind of his magic.
Exactly.
But, regardless of how he plays, I think your point is one that Steve and I have made before. 20 million on a backup striker, I don't care how well he performs. It's insane, especially for the club that we are. We never see that type of spending, and so when we're finally going to open up the wallet, it can't be for a backup striker. So
sorry, but just to that point, I mean, it's so in the COVID-19 economy as well. It's just it makes me wonder, like, what, like, is there something nefarious here? Like, what's going on? It's so crazy and insane and illogical to me that you would do something that incredibly, stupid for a lack of a better word. Because, the Musacchio, I think, is an intelligent signing that Lazio made. Yep. Typical Lazio signing. And like you said, Simone Inzaghi, again, with the credit he doesn't deserve, he has this incredible ability to get every single player to raise their level. Look at and not just older players. It's the same. It's across the board, younger to older. From Immobile to Acerbi, to Sergio, to Milinkovic-Savic, to Keita Balde, who no one knew.
I was going to say Keita Balde. Candreva's last season. These guys, absolutely. You look at their careers. He gets the best
out of. I mean, and not only that, Luis Alberto was a laughing stock before he came to Lazio. I mean, he always gets players to overperform. Acerbi was good. He was not the best Italian central defender, which he is now. There is no one better than him. He's the starting central defender for Italy, hands down. And this is what Inzaghi does. He works with such limited resources in a very difficult situation, in a very, very hot and heated piazza that Lazio is. And he keeps delivering time and time and time again, 5.5 years now, and of this. I mean, I was looking through it, just reading up on him just coming into this. I mean, interim manager for Pioli, who completely fell apart, brings them to a decent position, gets them to the final of the Coppa Italia, loses that, wins the Supercoppa, two fifth place finishes, develops all these players that we mentioned, and then wins in the Coppa Italia and another Supercoppa. And last season, they were really, you could really make the argument that with the form they were in, the way they were playing, they would have probably gone all the way to the wire with the Scudetto. I don't think they would have won it, but they definitely would have gone to the wire, given how well they played, and especially after that win against Juve when Lazio were perfect. Now the way I have nothing but admiration for this guy.
Let me say this then, Nima, because there were some seasons and where we fell short of expectations. Even starting this year, I think Lotito deserves credit, and this is where he does deserve credit, because he has allowed Inzaghi to grow. He has allowed Inzaghi to fail and learn from those failures. When we are in an era of modern football where so few managers get those opportunities, because most managers have such a short leash that the moment you fall or you trip, you're gone. And so we don't see those cases where young managers get those opportunities to learn from failures. That's where I see Lotito deserving massive praise, because he stuck by Inzaghi and allowed him to develop as a manager.
Oh, but he does that.
We said that before too, right? Like, just with Lotito himself being able to keep Inzaghi on for so long, I don't see him letting him go unless Inzaghi wants to go, unless he gives him that, that ultimatum. I don't think it's something about the money. If a Juventus or someone else comes knocking, or even a team from abroad, right? If they give him that opportunity to kind of go to that next level, maybe I could see him happening. But if they were to finish 7th in the league this year with no trophies, I can't see Lotito going, okay, Inzaghi, we're done. I'm going to fire you and we're going to hire someone else. Who's going to be in a better position to take this Lazio on than Inzaghi right now? He's done a great job for the past 5 years. And then obviously, like you said, with Lotito giving him the ability to kind of perform and learn from his mistakes, it's kind of a perfect and ideal situation for him right now as it is.
Oh, for sure. And I think he knows that. I think he wants to. I think Simone, given that there's a dual, there's also a dynamic here about with his brother, people being the far better player and the far more accomplished. And here in their coaching careers, you see who's the better coach. It's not even a contest. And I think with him, I think he's very ambitious. I think he wants to prove himself as a coach in the same way that in a way he wasn't able to as a player by winning Champions Leagues. And the only way to do that is to go to a Milan, Inter, and Juve in Italy and then abroad. But having said that, I mean, I think there's a reason why that contract renewal hasn't been signed yet. I think he wants to wait. I think Lotito wants to wait. And I think everyone wants to wait a little bit to see where this whole thing stabilizes itself, because it's so uncertain. But the form that Lazio are in is absolutely sensational.
Well, you mentioned those players that obviously Inzaghi has helped turn their careers around. Obviously, there's a lot of talent there, and he's just found a way. It's not like all of a sudden, we talk about Luis Alberto, the perfect example. It's not like he was you just don't bring that kind of magic out of nowhere. Inzaghi's found a way to obviously unleash it. Going into this match, which of these players, who's the player that as an Inter fan you're most afraid of? Which player is going to strike a little bit of fear heading into Sunday?
Well, Milinkovic-Savic is always good against Inter. He always turns up his A game every time he plays against Inter. So I think he's one, Inter have to look out for him. And one thing that he's really good at is in the air. His aerial presence is phenomenal. A lot of people don't talk about that because he's so good at so many other things. But no, I mean, it's all of Lazio. Lazzari on the right wing. It's going to be so interesting. They have so many interesting players, both of these teams, that it's going to be so interesting to see how you deal with Hakimi and how Inter deal with Lazzari. And then you have the midfield battle with Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic and Lucas Leiva if he's fit, and who does Conte pick? I think he's going to go with Vidal, Brozovic, and Barella. That's what he has to do, and they have to kind of neutralize them like they did maybe in the reverse fixture, because you can't give Luis Alberto space and time to pick out passes, because Immobile always runs right. He always finds that space, and he always attacks the ball in the right way in the right time to get into those finishing positions. And you don't want to be there when that happens, because then Lazio can outscore you. And again, I mean, this is again, it's Inzaghi's ability anyone can be a coach, but you have to, a very good coach can unlock the potential of players. That's the difference between a good coach and a bad coach and a brilliant coach, is the ability to work with what you've got and get the best out of what you've got, and also try to find that balance with your ideology and not compromising, but also pragmatism. I think Simone Inzaghi is phenomenal. To me, he is the next Italian super coach, hands down. And whoever gets him is, congrats. You've got a diamond on your hands.
Well, I want to jump in on a topic that I find quite interesting right now, that's been sparked pretty heavy on social media right now. And you mentioned the midfield battle. I am seeing a ton of Barella is the best midfielder in Serie A talk right now. As a Laziale that gets to see the magic of Luis Alberto, or the consistency and the tools that somebody like Milinkovic-Savic has, both in attack, what he does in defense, his presence, week in and week out. I take a little bit of offense when I hear, and this is not to take anything away from Barella. I want him. I'm an Azzurri fan, so I want him to become one of the greats. But he's just burst onto the scene. No doubt he's playing spectacular. So Milinkovic-Savic has been doing this now. He was the best midfielder in Serie A, was just named January MVP. Where do you stand on that take? Is Barella the best midfielder in Serie A? And if not, who is?
Look, I look at these things of who the best player in the world is, who's the best goalkeeper in the league, in the world, or midfielder, defender. It depends on the day that question is being asked. These things are it's like fresh. It has to be like fruit. It's fresh, it depends, because forms fluctuate and all that. Right now, I think undoubtedly Barella is the best midfielder in the Serie A today. But a month, 2 months ago, no, probably not. I mean, it depends on when we're having this conversation. If we're looking over the last year, I think Papu Gomez is the best player in the Serie A, period. bar none. And you can say that some people argue is he an attacker, is he a midfielder? Well, he played as a tuttocampista for
Yep.
Atalanta. And for me, he was last season's overall best player, hands down. This season, obviously not because of the issues that we all know with Gasperini, but to me right now, Barella is the best midfielder in the Serie A. Yes, today, but that can change, and it wasn't true a month ago. As for Milinkovic-Savic, I think he's got a new role, which I find really interesting. He doesn't make as many points as he used to, but he's got a much more. He's growing his game, and I think that's Inzaghi's using him in a different way now to develop the game, and it's really interesting to see where he's going, because he does a lot of the work in the quiet now, in the background, that he didn't used to do before.
Which isn't going to get you that social media credit,
exactly,
right? We live in a world of highlights, and and to your point of what have you done for me lately, Barella can have a beautiful goal, and all that talk is going to be on the now, where you don't see that hard work or what somebody does to really be that glue. That's not going to show up in a highlight package.
No, it's not. And I mean, I try to watch pretty much all the top teams' games. I think I've seen 80% of Lazio's games this season. And Luis Alberto, to me, is also, Inzaghi's developing how Lazio play. It's not the same as they did last season. It's a work in progress constantly with him, and he's using Milinkovic-Savic in a different role, where Milinkovic-Savic always makes the pass before the assist, like in hockey, the secondary assist. He makes a lot of those points, and Luis Alberto to a certain extent also. He's maybe makes the third assist even. He's using it differently. He's using Lazzari in a different way, much more further in advance, which I think is really interesting. I find the way he uses Lazzari, the way Lazio attack is very interesting. It's different, and in some ways it reminds me a little bit of how Sarri used to play with Napoli, the triangulations, the way he used the Insigne ball to the far corner to Callejon back down the middle kind of thing. They do that a little bit with Alberto and Lazzari back to Immobile, and sometimes with Milinkovic-Savic. These are minor details that I've looked at with Lazio. This is new for this season. You saw an embryo of it last season, but you don't see. So to me, it's all of that thing. It depends on the day. But I think consistently today, Barella, he does everything. He has been used in every single central midfield position, and he's done it brilliantly. And it's not just the goals; it's the intelligence, it's the ball winning, it's the passing, it's the crosses. Right now he's the best crosser of the ball in the Serie A. The pinpoint. The intelligence, he's got it all. Right now, he's the most in form, and therefore I think he's the best midfielder. But that doesn't take away anything from any of the others. I mean, Luis Alberto is not making as many assists as he did last season when he broke the record. But that doesn't mean that he's had a worse season. He's being used differently, in my opinion. In sometimes a little bit more advanced role, sometimes a little bit deeper role, because Lazio have changed the way they play. So I think that's impossible to me right now. Yes, I think Barella he's phenomenal. But having said that,
I hope we see that same form, next summer in Euros.
Oh yeah.
Obviously,
but I have to say, Lazio's midfield collectively. We were having this conversation on Studio Inter, the Sempre Inter podcast, and my co-host there, Will Beckman, said that in his opinion, I second that. Collectively, Lazio have, if not the best midfield in the Serie A, certainly top three, like their starting midfield. Central midfield. It has everything. It has so much intelligence, it's great shots, it's strong in the air, it's physicality, it has creativity, it has speed, it has everything. The three of them that together in the middle that's a very good midfield. And that's how Lazio win their games. They impose themselves from the midfield and onwards.
Well, I'm surprised we've gone this far into this conversation and yet to bring up the two players that obviously are leading the attack for both clubs, and that's Ciro Immobile and Lukaku, both having really positive seasons, again, following up great campaigns from both of them last year. But right now we see both Lukaku and Ciro Immobile at 14 goals apiece. Where do you see both of them finishing the season in goals? Like who comes out ahead in that race?
I think it's going to be Lukaku, but simply because of how Inter play, I think suits him. He gets into those positions more than Immobile does because of Lazio having changed how they play. It's really interesting. Last season, Immobile scored on everything. Everything. He was unplayable. But this season, it's a different Lazio, and I think he'll get to 20 league goals for sure. But I don't. But I think I see Lukaku scoring 25, 26, 27. I think that's what's going to be the difference. But the difference, something that I think that Immobile has, which I think is invaluable to Lazio, which is unfortunately something that I don't think Lukaku has. That's the thing, that he scores a goal per game, not on average, but actually one goal per game. He spreads them out. That wins you points. That wins you a lot of points when you have someone that consistently in every game scores goals. Lukaku has had bursts of goal scoring. And when he's in the zone, he scores 3 a game. But then he can go 3 games and not score 1. Whilst Immobile this season, he scores 1 every game. And that's why they're both on 14. So,
and when you also look at against the top side teams, I don't know if Nima, you saw this tweet the other day, but I think it's from a Milan fan, so you probably didn't, or hopefully you didn't. But 9 games against the top 10 teams in Serie A this season, Lukaku's only scored 2 goals. He's provided 0 assists. So it's also about performing against the top tier sides, and that's why we look at players coming into this game who kind of scares me the most on Inter. I look at it and everyone's Lukaku up front. He's a beast. He's obviously very good at what he does. One of the best strikers in the world, in my opinion, right now. I've liked Lukaku since he was back on Everton. But when you're looking at these top match games and you need your top players to perform, although he might perform in other ways, right now is in 2020, 2021 against top tier sides, he hasn't been playing the greatest. So I just didn't know if you had seen that take and why you think that reason is. Why is that?
I think it's because he gets targeted in the big, like in Italy, in the Serie A, when you play against the big teams, you're playing against the best players and the best coaches. That's when you kind of become, you have to take your game to the next level. And Lukaku is not the finished product yet, as Conte keeps saying. He's a diamond in the rough. That's the last thing he needs to develop. And I think he will develop that. Against Milan, he scores for fun. And they're a top side, and that's the team he consistently scores against. But against Juve, I mean, yesterday we saw again De Ligt. They have found a way to destabilize him and keep him out of the game and neutralize him. He needs to unlock the way, and I think they're working on that. And I know Conte is working on that to get him to improve on that. And in the same way against Acerbi. I mean, Acerbi completely nullified Haaland in the Champions League. So, he's the best Italian central defender. It gets harder. It's that extra level when you play against the top teams. And it's not just for players. Same thing with coaches. Simone Inzaghi's record against the top teams is outstanding. Antonio Conte's is not.
And that's another point when we look at the season too. Inter just in general against the top 6 kind of sides. You look at Lazio, Roma, Juve, Milan, Napoli, Atalanta. They've only won twice. They've tied a bunch, which is good, just kept them afloat. They've only lost once. But when you're looking at an Inter who I personally think could win the league, I know that you guys have external problems, and every team does. You look at Lazio with COVID, all the injuries they've kind of acquired, their poor transfer market. But you look at an Inter with the depth that they have, the quality that they have, the experience, the coach, the tactics. I honestly think that Inter could win the league this year. But when you're facing the top tier sides, you need to get the points across the line. And then right now for them, they're kind of in that mediocre range whereby they're doing it to an extent, but not to the capability that they can. And obviously it stems from different things, whether it be with Conte, with individual player performances. Like you said, Vidal's kind of lost you guys a bunch of points, but the drive and dynamic that player brings, I know you said he's past his peak, but I personally think that he's one of the greatest in his roles, and he has been for a little bit. And it's hard to find a player like him. Like we have a Lucas Leiva similar to what he does, but he shows that aggression. Sometimes it gets him into trouble, but overall, I think that he's a really good stabilizer for you guys. And obviously, I haven't watched as many Inter matches as you, and obviously being an Inter fan, you might prefer someone else in that role, especially despite his age. But overall, it's got to be where Inter wins these big matches to take them to that next level, and so they can win that Scudetto again.
No, I mean it's an issue. I mean, Paulo Fonseca has got that problem as well in big games. I mean, they are on 40 points because at the end of the day, sure, this is why Zlatan Ibrahimovic has won so many leagues. He scores against everybody. It's 3 points against Cagliari is it's as much worth as the 3 points against Inter. You have to win those games to win the league consistently. But the big games is where you have to take that extra step to win them. And Conte has a problem there, and he's not as bad as Fonseca, who's clearly, in my opinion, out of his depth tactically and not good enough for Roma. He won't be able to take Roma further than this point. But having said that, Simone Inzaghi's record speaks for itself against the top teams. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely astounding how well he does and how he reads these games. He never comes into a top game unprepared. The only time I can remember Lazio not performing well in a top game was against Inter in that game where I think they lost 3-0. And Lazio were in a difficult situation, and it was a storm as well.
Napoli and Atalanta as well over the years. I think I remember a few losses, 3-1 losses, 3-0 against Napoli and Atalanta over the years. I think they've gotten the better of us, but hopefully that changes soon. But
but what I mean is, like, consistently, if you look at the top teams, the top 4, top 5, his record is phenomenal against Juventus especially, and Inter and Milan and so on. And he and Roma as well to a certain extent. Now he delivers. He always delivers in these big games, and that's something that Conte has struggled with since he came to Inter. Sure, he won the 2 derbies last season. But this season, he struggled against Milan in both games, if we're perfectly honest. And we'll have to wait and see. I mean, the only good game that Inter have had against the top side was against Juve for 90 minutes and 20 minutes against Roma. The Lazio game, they were all right. The Atalanta game, they were okay, but they still didn't. Napoli, Inter were lucky to win that game. 1-0. Napoli were better, and Lorenzo Insigne losing his head, getting himself sent off, cost Napoli that game. It's just that simple. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they go at it. But I am a bit concerned because I don't like where Inter is. I don't. This what happened against Juventus as well. Yesterday in the Coppa Italia, it depends on how Conte can get over it, and if he's going to sulk, and if he can transmit that harmony and get them in the right frame of mind mentally against a Lazio they're coming to win. Lazio are coming to win. Lazio have the Champions League coming up, and they know that they need every point. And now it's when things matter the most is when you have to deliver, and so Lazio have done that under Inzaghi before.
Yeah, and this match is pivotal. I mean, this match, it's absolutely, and I feel like we say this all the time, and that's just the beauty of Serie A. Week in and week out, there's these matches that just mean so much. And you mentioned the point, a win against Cagliari, the 3 points there is just as important. But these matches tend to have a different sense of where they can traject a team.
Exactly.
If right now we're certainly not talking about Scudetto with Lazio right now, but that door remains opened with a win against Inter. Sure. Inter obviously continues to speak Scudetto if they can win against Lazio. The ton of confidence. You kind of see themselves going in such a positive direction. But I want to do something a little bit fun here. We've talked about a ton of these players. We've debated, Barella or SMS. Let's build our own starting 11. We each have a bank account of $35. We've assigned a dollar value based on tiers to both Inter and Lazio players. Nima, as our guest, will start with you. And let's start from attack to midfield to defense to keepers. And then we'll talk about the coaching, which based on our conversations here the past 30 minutes, I think I know the answer to that. But give us your 11. And again, you have that $35 budget. How are you constructing your squad for the best possible starting 11?
I think I've done the math. I've done it right here, and I was just double checking to make sure that I got.
We won't pin you for an extra dollar or two. Don't worry.
Okay, but I wanted to stay within the limit. But I've got Ciro Immobile up front, and I've got Alexis Sanchez feeding him balls. Alexis Sanchez, because he was on the $2 level, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So that's 7, and then I've got my 5 because both of these coaches play a 3-5-2, so I've gone with that. So it's Hakimi $4, SMS 5, Barella 5, Eriksen 1, and Lazzari 3. So that brings me up to, let me see, 7 and 10, 20, 25. 25. And then I've got Skriniar, Acerbi, and Musacchio, which brings me to 32. And then I got Reina in goal, which brings me to 34.
Yeah, that's a nice squad. I love that you were able to squeeze in both Barella and SMS into that. So
I mean, Lazzari on the left and Hakimi on the right, and then just have them.
I mean, the pace is just insane there. So, Steven, what are you going with, Steven?
Very, very similar with Nima. At first, I had Chiro and Sanchez up top, but I actually was able to squeeze in an extra $1. So I've got Chiro and Correa up top. Midfield 5 is very similar. Hakimi and Lazzari on the wings, Barella, SMS in the midfield, and then Vidal behind them. That comes to 18. And then I have Radu, Acerbi, and Skriniar in the back line, which just comes to 33. And then I have Reina with 2, so that comes to 35. So very similar.
Nice. I've got Skriniar on the right-hand side of the back three because that's where he plays, and I've got Musacchio in the middle and Acerbi to the left because he's left-footed, and that's kind of where he plays. So
Acerbi is versatile. Obviously, he can play. Does anywhere. So often with Lazio, can play on that left or play in the middle. My attack, similar to yours, Steven. I've got Ciro and Correa. I have Perisic, Alberto, SMS, Brozovic, and Lazzari. Unfortunately, Barella, as I was trying to squeeze him in, but I wanted to find a way to get Luis Alberto because for me, that synergy between him and Ciro Immobile is so crucial. So I wanted to have his creativity. And then my back line, same as yours, Steven. I have Radu, Acerbi, and Skriniar with Pepe Reina in as keeper. But the question, I guess, that I feel like I know the answer to, but maybe you throw us for a loop. Who's managing this side? Is it Conte or Inzaghi?
Simone, because I want to use Eriksen as a regista, and I think, and I want to have SMS and Barella as mezzala, and I think that Christian Eriksen in the hands of Simone Inzaghi is something I would love to see, because I got to give credit to Conte for finally backing down and trying to get this guy into his team, and I mean Conte is he is a tactical genius. He sees things that changes the game and no one else sees. But I honestly think that in terms of player development and what you've got with this particular team and this dynamic, I want to see Simone coaching it. I would love to see what he can do with Christian Eriksen.
Perfect. Steven, do I even have to ask?
I think we're all three across the same board, same head here.
Yep. So
I want Simone Inzaghi at Inter. All right. If it's not clear, let me just spit it out. I want him to replace Antonio Conte at Inter. I know you guys.
Nothing would break my heart more than
I know. I'm
Simone
sorry.
leave for another Serie A club.
I'm sorry to do this to you, Shawn, but I just the very idea of seeing him. Because his character would suit Inter so much more than Conte ever did in terms of how he is and carries himself and how he talks. And also, I just want to see what he can do with his squad. And also with Inter having money problems, to me, it's a no-brainer. If Conte leaves, it's Simone. It can't be anyone else.
I hope that doesn't happen.
And this isn't even just me being a Lazio fan. Obviously, there's a connection to Simone, but for me, there's something special just as a football fan that's so rare in today's game. This deep-rooted connection to a club that he played for, that he coached at the academy level for with the Primavera. So for me, even fans outside of Lazio should hope to see that continue in an era of such negative turnover all the time. To me, it's so special because it is that relationship amongst the supporters, the city, the club, that you really love to see that obviously would get spoiled if he were to run for a much bigger club. So, selfishly as a Lazio fan, but even just a fan of the game, I hope he stays.
When we interviewed Sven-Goran Eriksson, he for the Italian Football Podcast, and he was talking about how for him, winning one Scudetto with Lazio is worth winning 5 with a Juve, Inter, or Milan.
Absolutely.
Because the difficulty of winning outside of those northern clubs is so much more elevated. And he said that he doesn't care. He wishes he'd won 2, but
Yep.
as he said, Caniotti said to him, when he said that you should have won that one as well, he said, "No, Sven, one is enough. One is enough."
Well, look, it's the and you don't want to bring up Totti when we're talking about Lazio, but it's kind of the Totti effect,
Exactly.
right? You know, Totti bringing a Scudetto to Roma is certainly a lot bigger than jump into a Real Madrid and winning a bunch of trophies, or going to a Juve and winning Scudettos there. So
Yeah, for sure.
you know, you love to see those players and those managers stick with those clubs. So
Absolutely.
let's final question for the group here as we get close to signing off. Match predictions. Steven, this time I'm going to start with you. I'm going to then go to me, and I'm going to let Nima close us off. Steven, what do you have for this weekend's match?
Yeah, me and Shawn were just talking before this briefly, Nima, and I was kind of looking at, obviously, their Coppa Italia loss to Juve kind of hurts a little bit to an extent. Obviously, I know the record at the Allianz, whatever you want to call it, Juventus Stadium, isn't the greatest, but you look at Inter, who's, like you said, finished last in Champions League, or didn't do too well, come into the Serie A, and they've been doing pretty well. Like I said, they're Milan's having an unbelievable season that no one expected this. Like, who would have predicted Milan in first for this long and at this point in time? I don't think anyone. But you look at Inter, and they're kind of getting back on the form, and they have solely the league to focus on. So I think, like you said, it kind of comes down to Conte's ability to get this team to focus solely on Serie A and win the Scudetto. I think that's something that Inter is going to kind of key down on right now. And when you look at Lazio, I think for them, you're going to Champions League fixtures against Bayern Munich. Not going to be easy. Probably going to use a lot of energy in those 2 games and want to prepare them to the best of your abilities. While in Serie A, they're on great form right now. I think a top 4 finish for them once again and making it to the Champions League is what's going to make them happy at the end of the day. You look at an Inter who's just coming off that loss. I think they're going to rebound very, very very hardly against Lazio, and I think they're going to want to win this big game, like we've been talking about. They have struggled against the big games, but being at home, that's why they're going to come out strong. But Lazio, on the form that they're in right now in Serie A, like we've talked about, the streak of 6 consecutive wins, which hasn't been seen in quite some time. I want to say that Lazio's going to come out on top 2-1. I hope Inzaghi gets the better of the Conte. I know the matches are always close, so I could even say a draw is the more probable result, but I'd like to see Lazio come on top 2-1.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's going to be a draw because this match is so critical for both clubs. I can see both coming out trying to feel the match out a little bit, being a little bit more of a Conte versus Inzaghi battle of the wits tactic. I think both sides understand the weight of this game. Exactly. And I think because of that, you're going to see a little bit more negative football. And I think you're going to see a game that likely ends in a 1-1 draw. I think, you know, I got to give Cheeto the goal. I think Lukaku will find one in a big match. So that's my prediction, 1-1 with goals from Lukaku and Cheeto. What about you, Nima?
That's crazy because you just not only give the same result, you motivated it with the same thing I was going to say. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to see a very tactical game because of the importance for both teams. And, you know, Lazio don't play Bayern Munich until the 23rd. If it was next week they were playing, I'd say it's advantage Inter. But that Lazio can focus on the Serie A and for now, and then worry about the Champions League. And I'm torn between a 1-1 draw and a 2-1 win for Lazio here because I think they just look more like a team in harmony and balance than Inter do right now, and that's what worries me. I think losing against Juve is never good for Inter. It can create a lot of, you know, feelings of revenge as well, and that's good. But the way I see this game is I see Inzaghi doing what he always does against Conte, and that's kind of waiting for the moment to pounce. And when Inter suffer a lapse of concentration, hit Inter. For Inter, it'll be about capitalizing on any mistakes that Juve do, that Lazio do in the defensively with Patrick or Johnny if they play. Obviously, so no, it's gonna be a really tactical game. I think it's gonna be. I mean, I love these games. I love the city. I love the battle of the wits. I think it's beautiful. So I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be really interesting to see the scammy. It's going to be really interesting to see the approach. I think that I think that Inter will take the lead, and I think Lazio will score the equalizer, and then it'll end that way.
Yeah. Well, Nima, look, we appreciate you joining us. Why don't you tell our viewers, listeners, where they can find you and your work?
Well, it's right now. It's sempreinter.com and the Italian Football Podcast. We're on Patreon. We do 2 episodes a week, 1 review show and 1 interview show. I've already mentioned we've had Sven-Goran Eriksson, Roy Hodgson on. We've got former Milan striker Mark Haitley coming on next week. We've had Joe Tacopina, the current Catania president, and so on. So yeah, we're just going to keep doing that on every Thursday. And so patreon.com/TIFP if you want to follow that, and sempreinter.com for all the Inter news. Awesome.
Well, again, thank you. Big match this weekend. Certainly wish you the best of luck, but not too much luck. And as always, sempre Forza Lazio.